Greenland, a name that is either a thousand-year-old marketing lie or a prophetic vision of a warming future. On your standard classroom map, the Mercator projection, Greenland looks like a colossal white monster, appearing nearly as large as Africa. In reality, it is about the size of Mexico. But don't let the map's distortion fool you into thinking it is small. It is the world's largest island, a land of nearly 1 million square miles, where 80% of the surface is buried under a permanent, ancient ice sheet. For centuries, the world saw Greenland as a peripheral wasteland, a place of perpetual ice and silence. But as we move deeper into the 21st century, the silence is breaking. Greenland has become the center of the world. From the high-stakes boardrooms of global mining giants to the strategic war rooms of the Pentagon, everyone is looking north. Why Greenland? Why now? To understand the future of this island, we have to peel back the layers of its ice, its blood-soaked Viking history, its complex colonial tie to Denmark, and its sudden status as the most valuable real estate on Earth. To understand Greenland, you must understand the inlandsis, the Greenland ice sheet. Imagine a giant stone bowl made of ancient metamorphic rock. Now, imagine filling that bowl with snow for 100,000 years. Under its own weight, that snow turns to ice, pressing down with such force that it has actually pushed the center of the island's bedrock below sea level. In some places, the ice is over 3 kilometers thick. If you stood in the center of Greenland today, you would be standing on a frozen time capsule containing the air bubbles of the last ice age. But the ice is not a static block. It is a slow-moving river of glass. Glaciers like Jakobshavn Isbury, the fastest-moving glacier in the world, act as conveyor belts, dumping billions of tons of ice into the sea every year. It was likely a calf from this very glacier that drifted south in 1912 to meet the Titanic. Because the interior is uninhabitable, life in Greenland is a coastal existence. The jagged coastline is longer than the Earth's circumference, carved by fjords so deep they remain unexplored. There are no trees here, at least not in the way a European or American would recognize them. The Arctic willow grows only a few inches tall, hugging the ground to escape the biting winds. In Greenland, geography is destiny. Because the terrain is so rugged, there are no roads between towns. None. If you want to visit a friend in the next village, you don't drive. You take a boat in the summer, a dog sled in the winter, or a government-subsidized Dash 8-prop plane year-round. This isolation has created a series of island cities, each with its own distinct dialect and identity, tied together by the sea. Greenland's history is a cycle of arrival and disappearance. It has been discovered and lost at least 4 different times. The Paleo-Inuit pioneers, the first to arrive, were the Sakak and Dorset cultures, nearly 4,500 years ago. They crossed the frozen channels for what is now Canada. These were the true masters of the Arctic. They hunted with stone tools and lived in skin tents, following the migration of the bowhead whale. But the climate is a fickle god in the north. When the Little Ice Age began to chill the waters, these cultures vanished, leaving behind nothing but tiny, beautiful bone carvings and the rings of their tent stones. Then comes the year 982 CE. Eric the Red, a man of legendary temper, is exiled from Iceland for manslaughter. He sails west and finds the deep, grassy fjords of southern Greenland. When his exile ends, he returns to Iceland with a salesman's pitch. He calls the land Grönland. It worked. At its peak, Norse Greenland was a thriving medieval society of 5,000 people. They built stone cathedrals, raised cattle, and traded walrus ivory, the white gold of the Middle Ages, with the kings of Europe. For 400 years, Greenland was a European outpost. And then around 1450, they simply stopped. When Danish ships finally returned in the 1700s, they found the ruins of the churches, but the Vikings were gone. While the Norse were struggling to farm cattle in an icing world, the Thule people, the direct ancestors of today's Greenlanders, were thriving. They brought the kayak, the umiak, and the dog sled. They didn't try to change the environment, they adapted to it. By the time Hans Egede, the Danish-Norwegian missionary, arrived in 1721 to rediscover the lost Vikings, he found a vibrant Inuit culture that had already won the war of survival. Egede's arrival marked the start of the colonial era. Greenland became a closed colony of Denmark, a place of trade and conversion. It stayed that way until World War II, when the fall of Denmark to the Nazis forced Greenland to look toward its nearest neighbor, the United States. For centuries, it was a colony. In 1953, its status was upgraded to a province. But the desire for self-determination was too strong to ignore. In 1979, Greenland gained home rule, and in 2009, it achieved self-rule. Today, Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. They have their own flag, their own language, colossal, and their own parliament, the Inatsisartut. Denmark still manages foreign policy and defense, but for everything from education to mineral rights, Nuuk is the boss. The ultimate goal for many Greenlanders is full independence. But there is a massive financial obstacle, the block grant. Every year, Denmark sends roughly $600 million to Greenland to prop up its economy. Without this money, the Greenlandic welfare state, schools, hospitals, and pensions would collapse. This has created a geopolitical tug-of-war. To gain independence, Greenland needs a new source of income. This brings us to the world's most powerful nations. The strategic pivot in 2019 and again in 2025, the world watched as American interest in Greenland spiked. Why? Because as the Arctic ice melts, the Northwest Passage is becoming a viable shipping route, potentially cutting weeks off the journey between Asia and Europe. Greenland is the gatekeeper of this route. Russia is militarizing its Arctic coast. China is declaring itself a near-Arctic state. Consequently, the U.S. has reopened its consulate in Nuuk and is pouring investment into the island to ensure it remains within the Western orbit. The Greenlandic economy is a tale of two worlds, the traditional and the industrial. The silver of the sea for the average Greenlander, the economy is fish. Shrimp and halibut account for 90% of exports. If you've eaten high-end seafood in London or Paris, you've likely eaten the silver of Greenland. But a nation cannot build a global superpower status on shrimp alone. Underneath the retreating ice lies a fortune in minerals. Greenland is home to some of the world's largest deposits of rare earth elements. These aren't just shiny rocks. They're the essential components of the 21st century. Your smartphone, your Tesla's battery, and the magnets and wind turbines all require these minerals. The question for the next decade is, can Greenland mine its way to freedom without destroying the very nature that defines its soul? The 56,000 people who live here are facing a future of radical change. The ice they have lived on for 1,000 years is thinning. The sled dogs that were once essential for survival are being replaced by snowmobiles. The great silence of the Arctic is being replaced by the sound of construction cranes and tourist chatter. But the Greenlanders are not victims. They are a resilient, modern people who have survived the Little Ice Age and the colonial era. They are now stepping onto the world stage, not as a territory of Denmark, but as a rising nation of the North. Greenland is no longer just a color on a map. It is the frontier of the future.